Hopefully you'll remember that in the previous tutorial we wrote a program that could be used by a teacher, where the teacher entered the score that the student got in the test, and if the student scored 80 or more they got a distinction, 60 or more they got a merit, 50 or more they got a pass, and below 50 was a fail. Now, we first attempted to solve the problem like this, where we asked the user to enter their score, and we then checked to see if the score was greater than or equal to 80, in which case they would have got a distinction. And then we added another if statement that said if the score was greater than or equal to 60, then they got a merit. And we could have continued and added another statement that said if the score was greater than or equal to 50, then they got a pass. However, when we attempted to solve it this way, we had a problem when we ran the code. When we ran it and we put in 80, it outputs distinction, merit, and pass. Reason being that if we look at these if conditions here, with a score of 80, well, 80 is greater than or equal to 80, so it outputted distinction. Then it went on and did this if statement here. Score was still 80, and 80 is greater than or equal to 60, so it printed merit. Went on and did this if statement here, and again, score was 80, so 80 is greater than or equal to 50, so it printed pass. And that's not what we wanted. We ultimately solved it, and we ultimately solved it by adding an AND onto these conditions. However, there is another way in which we can do it, and that's this. We can introduce what's called an ELIF, short for else if. If I add it here, then what this says is if score is greater or equal to 80, print distinction. Else, if the score is greater or equal to 60, print merit. So it will only do this bit of code here if this condition is false. So it will only do this if the score's not greater than or equal to 80. We do the same here, make this an ELIF, then it will only do this bit here if the score's not greater than or equal to 60. If we now run the program and try putting 80 in, hopefully it just prints distinction, because as soon as it gets to this statement here, it ignores these two ELIFs, these two else ifs. If we run it again, let's try it with 60 this time. What it should do now is it will check score. We put 60 in, so 60 is not greater than or equal to 80, so it will ignore this and then go on to do this condition here to see if score is greater than or equal to 60. Well, it is, because we put 60 here, so it should output merit, as it does. Let's run it again. This time put 50 into it. Let's go through the logic again. Score is currently 50, so if 50 is greater than or equal to 80, well, it's not, so it ignores this. It checks this condition here, score greater than or equal to 60, well, it's not, because it's 50, so it ignores this here, and checks this condition here, score greater than or equal to 50, well, 50 is greater than or equal to 50, so it should output pass. Finally, we just need to check to see if outputs fail. So let's put 49 in here, click on OK. It does nothing. What we need to do at the bottom of here is we need to come out with a default position. If none of these conditions are true, then by default it must be a fail. So we introduce the normal else, which we're familiar with from before, and we certainly say fail. So if none of these conditions are true, then it does this here, it prints fail. So let's run it. Let's try it now with 49, click on OK, and we get the fail. Now what we've proved here is that there's more than one way to solve a problem, and that's true with almost any non-trivial computer program that you will be asked to write. Invariably there will be a multitude of different possible solutions. Some more efficient than others. In this case, this solution here is actually more efficient than the one in the previous tutorial. However, it might be a little more complicated to get your head around. Some people might find the previous solution easy to understand. Some people might find this solution easy to understand. The point, though, is that there's usually always more than one solution to any particular problem. And that concludes this tutorial.